vanilla coming up, some caramel. Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Horst Lüning. I'm the master taster of Whisky.com, and today I'm the master storyteller of Whisky.com. I have a little fear about this bottle here on my cask, not because of the content, but about the people and the story behind. It's all about Ernest Shackleton, and this whiskey is called The Journey, and it's a MacKinlay whiskey. And the MacKinlay is now in the possession of White & Mackay. This whiskey came on the market in 2013, and there are still bottles available on the shelves. It's above 100, and depends very much where you buy this bottle, how expensive it is. And this bottle is the second edition of this MacKinlay whiskey, and there is a huge story about this bottle. First, have a look at this bottle. The outside is modern, and it says blended malt Scotch whiskey. That means there are several different malt whiskies blended together from different distilleries. A faithful recreation of a 1907 whiskey and its presentation. So this one is a replica. We already had a replica whiskey here on my cask. It was the Macallan, 1896. British Antarctic expedition. Shackleton, do you remember now? Ernest Shackleton. He was 4 times in Antarctica, and the 4th time he died there. MacKinlay's blended malt Scotch whiskey, the enduring spirit. Enduring, yes, why? Now that's part of the story that comes. Here we have some straw covering the bottle, and this shows that this bottle is really old, and in former times bottles were covered in straw to protect them against, well, everything. Not thirsty people. As I've written from the label, the story about this bottle started in 1897. In 1897, in the heart of the Scottish Highlands, a distillery worker takes one last look at the rows of oak cask freshly filled with the fledgling new-make spirit and slowly pulls the heavy door shut on the cool, dark warehouse. This is Glenmore Distillery, already gone, closed, torn down. There's a supermarket now on that place, as well as Glenalbin, the neighboring distillery. They lay directly at the Caledonian Canal, at the locks at Inverness. Bottled in 1907, so 10 years later, these whiskies were bottled as MacKinlay's Rare Old Highland Malt. This whiskey was recognized as one of the classic Highland malts of its day. It is therefore no surprise when MacKinlay received an order from the famous explorer Ernest Shackleton for a total of 25 cases. One of the more indulgent items included among the provisions designed to sustain his British Antarctic expedition of 1907. So they had everything. Dried meat, spinach, dried, everything was dried, and the taste of these dried food was awful. And so after cooked water and this awful smell of this dried food, they had some whiskey to swallow. Shackleton had, as I said, 4 expeditions. The first was Discovery, very first he wasn't allowed to go with because his physical condition wasn't all right. And in that expedition, I think it was the Scott expedition, wasn't it? All people died, so he would have been dead before. So the second one was the Nimrod, and this went from 1909 until 1914. And then the ship, the Nimrod, returned, and quite a few of the of the people of the boat were shot in the First World War. So the ones who did not die in Antarctica was shot on the dying fields in Europe. Horrible. The third one was the Endurance, and this was the most famous expedition of Shackleton because they lost the Endurance due to strong ice, and they had to sail in this small rescue boat a few thousand miles through the Antarctic Ocean. And they survived and were rescued on Elephant Island. And the fourth expedition he died due to a heart attack. And the doctor said before, do not drink so much alcohol. So, yeah. This whiskey was carried with him, and this is the hut for the base camp of the Shackleton expedition. And here you see the tins and everything where the dried food was in, and then they had to hurry, just leaving Antarctica before the strong winter came, and they weren't able to sail away because of strong ice. So they just managed it, and they lost whiskey behind. What a shame. They lost 11 bottles close to a case behind, and it was stored below the floor of the hut. And there the whiskey lay like in a time capsule and rested there. And whiskey stays unfrozen until minus 45 to 50 degrees centigrade. And then it becomes not immediately hard as ice, but a more stronger consistency, and so that they did not harm the bottles. They were still there. And chemical reactions double their intensity, or the rate of activity double with every 10 degrees centigrade you add to the chemical reaction. And with temperatures very seldom above freezing point, this whiskey was really stored there and did not change. There are or were bottles on the market in the UK which were as old, and I think the oldest bottles sold in the last decades were one of Bowmore, I think, and they were just only 3/4 left, and the cork was porous, and the bacteria went to action in the cork, and so it's quite difficult in temperatures in the Western world to have a bottle more than 100 years old. So this hut is today a national heritage or a global heritage, and of course you couldn't pick up the whiskey and say it's mine. No, it was in possession of the Antarctic expedition. There is an English man called Malya, Dr. Malya. The one at the bottom, and the top is my friend Richard Patterson. And White and Mackay, he's the head of everything at White and Mackay. He's not CEO, but head of everything which has to do with tasting and bottling and selecting and so on. And this is his boss, this Indian, who bought White and Mackay. And then they were bought again to a majority of stakes by Diageo, by the Scots again. And they were allowed to carry with them 3 bottles of this whiskey, and they were allowed to take samples and to taste how this whiskey tastes. And on top you can see one of those old bottles. Wonderful. There are videos on the net with Richard Patterson showing how he unpacked this extremely strong package where the private jet of this billionaire brought the bottles back to the UK for investigation, where they in the end rest now, either back or in some museum or in some deep freezing. I have no idea. This is the picture of the original bottle. No, as it should be. And the original bottle they claimed was this one. And from this information they rebuilt or refabricated this old bottle. And to be legally conform with every regulation and law, they added this label. Down here you can tear it off and then it looks as the old one, but you have to take off the label as well. Rare old Highland malt whiskey blended and bottled by Chase, MacKinlay and Company, blenders and distillers, Leith and Inverness. 1907 British Antarctic expedition, specially prepared. Ship endurance. And there were shipping papers and everything. And here in the back there's also a label telling the complete story. And they measured also the alcoholic content, and it was 47.3. As I said, this was the second bottling of this Ernest Shackleton whiskey. The first one was sold out quite fast, and it contained mainly the blend Glenmore, because they had papers showing that most of it was Glenmore. And this is the second one, and this was produced by whiskey from other distilleries out of the White and Mackay group, which is Jura and Dalmore. And there was here you have a look of the how it was in former times. And this second bottle, called The Journey, was produced for the anniversary of the of Alexandra Shackleton. She's a grandchild, I think, of Ernest Shackleton, and she did an expedition down there in 2013, like his grandpa, with the same materials, ships and everything, to show how it was in former times. And therefore they produced this new. And Glenmore is a distillery, as I said, long torn down, and not really many casks left. So now they used other distilleries, and the taste is quite similar to the first one, but the number of bottles released were a lot bigger, so the price went down 30% something, so that a lot of people now, 2 years after the release of the bottle, there are still bottles available on the shelves. You are able to, to find out how this old or this whiskey tasted 100 years ago. This is the important fact of this bottle. And now I have very much respect, not for the whiskey, no, for the people, who then sat in shivering cold and said, "Give me a whiskey." It has some smokiness, a fruitiness with apple and pears and vanilla coming up, some caramel. Not too old, no, not those strong, heavy, old aromas typical for older whiskies. And the smoke is like Highland Park, a little less probably. Yeah, have a sip. %, quite strong, warm, complex in your mouth, still the smokiness present, some spiciness appearing, oak is already there, so 10 years of time. Had the original, I don't know how old they were, they added, as they said, some older Juras and Dalmore. Little caramel, very warming, the alcohol and the spice, yeah, good impact. And the aftertaste is not too long, but it's still lasting. And I had this second sip because I'm really interested in this whiskey. To say something about quality and probably the value of this whiskey. This is a typical Highland malt whiskey, fruitiness, a little smokiness like in the old times where they used a lot of peat for drying and heating everything. It's alcoholic strong. That means that the taste is not that intense. It's lighter. I would say 12 to 15 years old, and price 50 euros, pounds, dollars would be appropriate for this whiskey. But you have to pay for the recreation of this whiskey, for the enormous work the people did at White & Mackay to bring this whiskey back to life. You have to pay extra. There's no way to avoid this extra money. And if you look at the bottle, even the bottle is older and has some marks in it. It's not that good industrial quality as we have today. So all this costs money. These bottles are especially fabricated for this whiskey. You have to pay for it. And you have the feeling how the whiskeys were 100 years ago. This is the only bottle with which you're able to do this. And Richard Patterson, he is privileged to have really tasted the old stuff. Oh, wonderful idea. This is the heritage to the people which went to Antarctica. They are all dead now, as we will be in the future. There are some bottles left on the market. Go for them. It's a very good experience. And if you think about those people, have a look at the videos of the expeditions. There are pictures available. It's worth the money. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned. There's more.